Welcome to Being Matthew 25, a live stream series from the Presbyterian Mission Agency. I am your host, DeEtte Decker, Acting Senior Director of Communications for the Presbyterian Mission Agency. And we're excited you're with us today for this very special General Assembly episode of Being Matthew 25. The 225th General Assembly starts this Saturday, June 18th. And when the Reverend Gregory Bentley and ruling elder Elona Street-Stewart, co-moderators of the 224th General Assembly, began their term, everything was virtual. No one, including them, envisioned that this would remain the case for their 2 years serving as co-moderators. The co-moderators embrace the symbol of Sankofa as a representation of both African American and Native American cultures. They wanted people to know that being part of the history of the church meant they had to move forward with whatever the church was going to be in the future. As the co-moderators have said many times, the whole idea is that we're moving forward. Our feet are moving forward, and we are to reach back and take what is precious and take that wisdom and move forward. Recently, I sat down with the co-moderators and Reverend Dr. Diane Moffett, the Executive Director and President of the Presbyterian Mission Agency, to hear their thoughts on what we as a church need to carry forward in order to survive in the future. I invite you to watch this rich, important, and extended conversation with me now. We're joined today by the Reverend Gregory Bentley and ruling elder Elona Street-Stewart, the co-moderators of the 224th General Assembly, as they reflect on their time as co-moderators in the virtual world of the last 2 years plus now, and how they have seen the church evolving. Gregory and Elona, I have heard you both refer to the responsibility of co-moderators as building relationships. And considering the challenges of the past 2 years with our limited ability to be together in person, can you describe how you have experienced this process of building relationships, and how did you go about doing that? Elona, let's start with you.
Well, I'm laughing because I realized we were able to meet and greet and say hello and goodbye all across the church these last 2 years, usually on screen. Building relationships without hugs has been, the challenge, but I think we were able to do it because you can be very engaging in conversation with people, listening. But as you can see, I'm a person that talks with my hands and my head and my body. Gregory and I always tended to be able to say, we're here with you. And building relationships means, though, that, we were recognizing people in their positions. So it's not just knowing their name and maybe where they're from or where they were meeting with us from, whether it was a council meeting or a congregational meeting in worship. But when I say, recognizing them in the work that they do. So being able to thank them if they were serving as a committee leader, or if they were someone else leading in worship, or if they were the moderator of a panel, because the relationships that we have are inherently also built on the negotiation of why it's important for me to be with you and thank you for this invitation. And so we were able to build relationships around, we're here as moderator. We've been elected by the General Assembly, but we wear other hats. We're real humans. We have other responsibilities, and we know you do too. So when we're here meeting with you and really working on building this relationship, don't see us as as people, two people, this pair of us, set apart from you. We honor the position that we are in, and that's been an incredible opportunity for us. But we're here sitting with you or talking with you in a way that we want to say, this relationship is based on the equity and our engagement directly with you as partners, not as someone coming in so different, so vastly above you, or so set apart from you. So that would be one thing I'd share.
Gregory, can you talk a little bit about the relationship that you have with your co-moderator and why it was important? Why the decision for co-moderators? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Elona is basically my sister from another mother. I mean, it's like we've known each other. I mean, it's eerie to be honest. Just the connection and how our values align with one another and our backgrounds. I mean, it was God ordained that we came together when we did. Relationships are the tracks on which success in anything runs. One of the illusions that we have as inhabitants of planet Earth is that there's an us and a them. But the fact is, there's only us. There is no us and them. We're all in the same boat, whether we're billionaires or paupers. I mean, we're all, now some people may experience the downside of life more quickly than others. But if we don't pay attention long enough, sooner or later, we're all going to be in the same boat, be in the same condition. I mean, I think it was Martin Niemöller who said that when he said during Nazi Germany, some folks said, well, I'm not a Jew, so, it ain't got nothing to do with me. I'm not a trade unionist, so that doesn't have anything to do with me. I'm not gay, so that doesn't have anything to do with me. So finally, it came for me, and there was nobody left to speak. So, the very fact is we are related. It's not like we have to form relationships. We are related. The thing is, will we work to enhance and make that relationship flourish into all that God wants it to be, so we can experience the fullness of the abundant life that God wants us to experience.
First, I want to say, so privileged and honored to serve with these co-moderators and for their voice and
Likewise.
Just their support of mission and ministry, Matthew 25. So
yes.
I am just grateful to God for both of you and the lives that you lead, both as co-moderators, but in your respective positions as pastors and Senate leaders. So, but listen, you all know that I'm all about relationships, and as we look in the scriptures, I'm thinking about going back into Matthew 25, and there are several things there, a parable about the workers who come in at different times, and then James and John wanted to have special privilege, and Jesus saying, you got to be a servant of all. And but what do you really find in Jesus when it comes to relationships? People thought that he would operate the same way that people in other dominant hierarchical systems would, but he didn't. And social privilege for him it didn't mean the same thing as it meant to others. And he would seek out people without that quote unquote privilege and power. And being in charge for him meant that you were really serving people. Right. And so let me ask you all as co-mods, what has been your experience at being a servant leader in such a time as this? You have served during a time of a pandemic. I would love to know what your experience has been.
Two words come to mind: resilience and adaptability. I think when this pandemic first hit, some people were just kind of, hunkering down and just kind of waiting for it to pass so we can get back to things as usual. And I think, as this thing kind of drags out and it doesn't seem to be any end in sight, folk are beginning to wrap their minds around the fact that it's not going to go back to the way it used to be. So what is going to be the new normal? One word that I've been lifting up in all of our engagements is hybridity. How do we bring the best of in-person engagement with the best of virtual engagement? How do you have a dynamic mix of the two? And in spite of the challenges that the last 2 years have presented, I think there's some real opportunities that have presented themselves to do church in a different way. Not just to do it as a stopgap measure, but to use it as a way of doing it in a better way. For instance, I have my senior saints. Some of them were kind of, challenged by doing the virtual stuff and getting the link and getting on YouTube and all that. But now they love it. Some of them, are even saying that, hey, if we're having a ministry team meeting, why do we have to all come down to the church? Get in the car and drive down to the church and turn on air and gas and lights. Let's just jump on that Zoom and take care of this. And that doesn't preclude, meeting in person. We're just saying there's some things that actually could be done in a better way, doing it on Zoom. The thing is, how do we get the right combination, the right blend where people feel like they are connected and a part of the body?
You're also using the term "we." A servant leader, that you're with them. You were in there with them. You're not lording over them like No. I'm in charge. I'm the moderator and the pastor. But I think the term, we getting in there, being with them. What about you, Elona? What are your thoughts about servant leadership?
Sure. I think it's essential. And I think that Gregory and I both actually have brought a lifetime of experience about being a servant leader, whether it was in our family, in our community, in our jobs. And when we arrived here, after the election as co-moderators, we were already equipped to serve and present ourselves in that way. There is a great authenticity in our saying this inner relationship. We are interdependent. And that our entire denomination, the church, the living church, really needs people who understand how interconnected they are in the relationship of what we do. But I'll give you, several examples. I mean, like even in my own church, I've been the pastor's wife. But I'm also the one, I would just say, I cut the grass. I would haul the lawnmower in the back of my pickup truck. My ministry meant going down and cleaning out the refrigerator with all the nonprofit groups that were doing it, and then going upstairs and maybe, being the Sunday school teacher and, whatever else the day required. But that there was a sense of already arriving. I think Gregory and I understand that from day to day, if we're called to do something, it's not above us. We're not like wearing, gloves and we can't touch anything. We're there to help. We're there to listen. We're there to be part of the people. And as you said, we're using the term we. That's also why we chose the Sankofa image, which again, is so much a part of being out there in our community, but we hadn't seen it show up in the church as much. But the idea is that here you have this bird who is flying, but, with her head turned back, grabbing, this egg to carry forward, this, what's so valuable, what you'll need to survive in the future. Gregory and I said, you know what, that's going to represent our indigenous and our Afro-American history. That's what we're bringing to the church. So the servant leadership is also saying, we're going to remember where we come from and how we've made it this far. And we're bringing that with us into the future of the church. And so there is that sense of, yes, we're servant leaders. We're willing to, wrap the towel around our waist and get down and do the dishes, because that's what the future church is going to require.
Elona said something I want to say a little bit about interdependence. One of another great delusion that we have is that we can live life as independent beings. Now, independence is a necessary stage in our development as human beings. We all start life as dependent. We're totally dependent on somebody else when we get here. Somebody has to feed us. Somebody has to change us. In fact, if it wasn't for somebody else, we wouldn't be here. We would have died in infancy. And then the next stage is to try to get the child to develop some independence. Okay, this is how you feed yourself. You may be a little sloppy with it, get food all over their face, but they learn how to feed themselves, learn how to tie their shoes, learn how to put on their clothes and all that. But the sad fact is many of us stop at that. That's not, I don't think that's the vision, the New Testament vision and Jesus' vision of the church. The next step is interdependence. But here's the thing, dependent people can't be in interdependent relationships. They must establish some degree of independence. And then we come as whole people to the process, not as a deficit people, but we come, Elona and I, like she said, we were clear, we were bringing gifts to the church.
Yeah.
That it was as much an honor for the church to have us serve in this position as it was for us to be serving in this position. We were clear about that. So it was a mutually edifying thing. We weren't just coming saying, oh, we're just so blessed because the church recognized. No, we're honored to be serving, but it's also an honor for the church to have us serve in this position because of the communities that we represent and what we bring from those respective communities.
Amen.
So as you are leaving this term as co-moderators, what do you long for the world to see about God and about our faith?
Well, I would say I hope it's that sense of belonging, that in a world that's so full of divisive arrangements, and that many of those arrangements are oppositional. As we mentioned earlier, it's either us and them or, now and later. The reality is for the church to continue to see its future purpose is to understand that sense of belonging. And so many of our wiser ancestors have addressed that issue, that all the gifts that you have been given are not for you. You have been given them to use for others. And I think that, our understanding in the church, and as we get ready for this General Assembly, the General Assembly is the gathering of people who belong together in this particular communion called the Presbyterian Church. It shouldn't be seen as the place where there's another separate non-personal entity called the church, and we're going up and knocking on the door asking that entity to do stuff for us or to hear us. What we need to say is when we arrive at General Assembly, it is us. There is no other. The people who are working with General Assembly, the people who are preparing now for General Assembly, the people who will be reading and studying and praying together, that's all of us. The church is us. And so my hope for the future is that we have this appreciation for what does it really mean to belong. And I'll just share with you that, so many times now, I can just feel myself rising to present when people start talking about tribalism as if, to be part of a system that's, tribal means that you're competing with each other. You can't get along, or you are wanting to separate from each other, and like reduce them so that you can grow bigger. Well, from a person who comes from a tribe, that is like the antithesis of what the tribalism means. Tribalism for us is this family connection. So you start with your family, and then it's your extended family, where you actually call people by those terms of mother and father, cousin, auntie, uncle, and then it's, your people, your tribe. So, I want to say you have got it so wrong when you begin, using this term tribalism as something we need to forget about. No, actually come to some people who live in their tribes. We have something to show you and tell you. And I would say that about the church. If the church in the future can begin to really appreciate that it's we, it's not a possessive thing that I somehow have, that you haven't figured out. No, it's the church. We are a part of something bigger than us. The church has been a gift to us from God, and so we're a part of that. So that's my hope in the future, and we're seeing that you know there's people who understand that and value that and pass that on. Yeah,
that represents a shift for so many, though, right?
I know.
So many, and the way the dominant culture often reinforces that sense of tribalism, not as a place of where belonging, where people flourish and and you are in connection with other people, but that you are separate from. So it really does require a shift in consciousness to understand the connectiveness and the belonging that we have, and that we're born into a particular context, which is our gift, God's gift.
It's a gift, yeah,
and a gift to be shared with the world. You know,
but that's why Gregory and I was going to say, that's why Gregory and I say we're, you know, brothers and sisters of another mother.
It was you all have that prophetic imagination, that kingdom or king, you know, that, you know, and so many of us, so many, you know, human siblings, we just needed to have that, especially as we're dealing with so much change in the world. And change can be very scary. When you talk about servant leadership, you mentioned the word adaptability. Reverend Gregory, I just, you know, as humans, we're so uncomfortable with not knowing the unknown path, and there, you know, there's a natural kind of anxiety that arises. And I know that we're in a new space and place in this period of time in history. But the unknown path can also bring a promise of adventure, the possibilities of discovering something new, the potential of developing our faith at a level that we would not have an opportunity, as we're compelled to move into this future with hope. And, you know, the hope knowing that God is with us, that and we're with each other, and we can do this together. But anyway, I wanted to ask you, as you have shared in this position, what signs of hope do you see to strengthen our faith in our denomination as we move forward for General Assembly and even after that? What signs of hope do you see to strengthen our faith?
Well, the fact that we really have built up some momentum with the Matthew 25 vision, more congregations, presbyteries, synods, and other entities are signing on. I think people are catching the vision. We're not where we want to be, but I think we're moving in the right direction on that. I think folk realize that business as usual won't get it done. That's real. That's a real sign of hope for me. That in spite of, you know, the resistance of some people in the church, there's a critical mass of people who say we're ready to go forward. We're ready to let the Spirit lead us where God is leading us, and I'm very thankful and grateful about that. I want to say something else too about a very important word that Elona used, belonging. Now, Howard Thurman said that, you know, of course, he used the term man, but he really meant person. A person must feel at home somewhere before they can feel at home everywhere. Before you can become cosmopolitan, a citizen of the world, you got to have some type of rootedness and groundedness in a particular space. And that's why our respective communities are so important to us. That's where we learn how to be human. Now, that isn't an ending point, that's a starting point. That's to launch us into the world. I'm reminded of what Khalil Gibran said: our children are not our own, but they come through us, but they don't belong to us. That our communities launch us into the world, give us a sense of self and somebodyness, so we can engage the world, not as a deficit people, but as people who bring gifts and want to share those gifts as others do mutual sharing as well. So I think we start at the wrong place. We start with belief. You know, belief is the wrong place to start. Belonging is the right place to start, because a sense of belonging shapes behavior. My girls act in a certain way because they belong to a family. They belong to a community. You understand what I'm saying? Not because of some belief, some actual belief, because they want to uphold the standard and the values of the family. There's a certain way of behaving that they have had modeled for them, and since they belong, they want to uphold that. We back into belief. We just baptized 2 students not too long ago from A&M, local HBCU right up the street from the ship, and we took them under. We had to take them over to a primitive Baptist church because we didn't have a baptistry, and they said, we want to go under. I said, well, I'll take you under. And so we went over there and and we immersed them, and when we baptized him, it was a great, powerful celebration, and we didn't, and after they came up out of the water, now, do you believe Jesus was of the like substance or same substance? No, you don't, you back into that, those types of questions. What you got to firmly put into place is, we belong to you and you belong to us. We are one. We are part of the same community. You are loved and you are valued for who you are, and not for any particular theological perspective that you have. So I'm very hopeful about the way forward, and you'll see this reflected in our report, which we're finishing up even as we speak. We're like Jesus. We may not come when you want us, but we'll be right on time.
And we want you when you come.
We'll be there. But that is so true, because the church itself is to be aware of who it is and how it is perceived in the world. It's not so much what we think about what we look like or how important we are. It's also important to really understand how we're perceived. And if we are the hands and feet of Christ, we need to make sure that witness really is exactly the way Jesus would be and have us be. And how much more could we say for people? Because I'll just tell you, these are trying times, but we come from people who have survived trying times. I mean, life has been really challenging all along, and the church has also been challenging. And sometimes we make it more challenging ourselves as part of the church. But if we really want to be able to say, how aware are we of the differences we can make in the world, the realities around justice? Jesus was making it pretty simple. These are the things I'm expecting of you. You got to be good people, and doing good is this stuff. I think, again, there is, if we can hear the people in the church and we join and lift those voices up, that is a promise. And Gregory, and I have continued to say, it's not like, we're losing in these changes in the church. The church, by being reformed, is resurrecting itself from the darkness into the light. And man, if you're not hopeful about that, we should be waking up every morning singing, God is there with us. God is for us. Every day for our children and their children. How much better in the midst of horrific times can that's the message that we need to bring, and that's what we want to share with people as co-moderators. That's the church that we're a part of.
Dr. Emily Towns, dean of the School of Divinity at Vanderbilt, says it best for me. She says the church is not dying, it's being transformed.
It's being transformed, right?
And now transformation, the process of transformation can feel like death sometimes. And it may even look like death sometimes in terms of dwindling numbers and what have you. But I prefer to look at it as pruning and winnowing. That it's kind of counterintuitive. You prune a plant, you actually inflict injury on it in order to make it healthier. It really is counterintuitive. It's kind of like surgery, that you have to actually to create a wound in order to bring about health. Right. And I think that's what's happening now. And it is not necessarily pleasant, but I think it's necessary if we're going to live into the fullness of where God is leading us.
And also, Greg, when you talk about counterintuitiveness, you talk about the kingdom or the kingdom principles. Counterintuitive. you want to live, die.
That's it.
You want to be great, become a servant of all.
That's it.
It's counterintuitive, but it is this prophetic imagination that allows us to move forward as a people created by God to live in relationships, in right relationships with one another and with the earth we occupy.
And those right relationships involve, and this is, I think, why Gregory and I were so interested in Matthew 25. The right relationship
I got to say this before you start.
Oh, go ahead.
I just have to do this plug just for you, because Elona Street-Stewart, CoMod, before she was CoMod, I want you all to know that the first people we bought Matthew 25 to was Elona Street-Stewart in the Senate of Lakes and Prairies.
Yep.
He gave us, along with the presbyter who was there at the time, he's no longer there, I know, and the moderator, I think, that was there, some wonderful, wonderful information. And with that, we took it, we consumed it, and we continued with it. So I just want to say that. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I just wanted to have everybody to know that. This moderator was
but you can see the enthusiasm we have for how sacred and significant this message of Matthew 25 is, because it's not about, getting to see how wonderful we can do in charity to take care of other people. What it means is that in our understanding of, these issues of poverty and racism and the need to not be anemic, the need to be vital in order to respond to this.
Yes.
We need to be able to say, so what is going on here? What's been happening that has caused this situation? That's where the real, the seeds of hope in the church are going to lie. Because as we, again, go back upstream, or like with Sankofa, look back and say, what caused this? What's been going on here? What is the system? What is happening? It's not just this individual person that's, we need to shame into the fact that, you're poor. No, the idea is that in order for us to really be the church, we've got to be part of that. Let's keep looking back. What's been happening? That's where we need to be able to say the church is here. How can we make a difference now with everything that flows forward into the future? Man, if that's not powerful, that's been the message for thousands of years.
Right. Well, I think Adam Clayton Powell, the former congressman and pastor, longtime pastor of Abyssinian Baptist Church in New York, he was once approached by some young activists, and they said, "Reverend Powell, Christianity has failed. Christianity has failed." And Dr. Powell said, young folks, Christianity hasn't failed. It hasn't been tried yet.
How true.
Just because I stand in my garage and go vroom, vroom, that doesn't make me a car. Have we really committed to and tried the way of Jesus?
Yeah.
Right.
We've seen pockets of it. Don't get me wrong. There have been people who've held up the bloodstained banner, some of whom weren't even members of the institutional church. But have we really tried the way of Jesus?
Right.
You see, we can't say something has failed if we haven't really invested in it and tried it. We used to sing old song down in the country, "Try Jesus, he's all right. I done tried him, man. I know he's all right." We really complicated something that is really simple. Jesus in I think about the parable of the Good Samaritan, when the lawyer approaches Jesus and he asked him about what is the greatest commandment, and then Jesus, in typical rabbinical fashion, answers a question with a question. He says, "Well, you know the scriptures. What do you read there?" He tells him, "You shall love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and all thy soul and all thy mind." And Jesus said, "Oh man, you know that Bible. You've been to Sunday school. I can tell you didn't miss a vacation Bible school." But then he said something else. He says, "Do this and you shall live." Not know this. We have a lot of smart people in the PCUSA, but there's a knowing doing gap. It's not about what we know. It's about what we do. Blessed are the peacemakers, not those who hold a conference on peace, not those who write a book on peace, not those who come together and discuss peace, those who make peace. For they shall be called the children of God. So
Amen.
that's the real challenge, to get to the doing. We know a lot. When you look at our policy in the Presbyterian Church, if you just were to look at our policy, you would say, oh, this is the best church in the world. But there's a knowing doing gap. And that's what we got to close, the knowing doing gap.
Right.
I just want to sit with that for a minute. That's powerful. What will it take for us to begin to do? I feel like that's what I feel like, and I'm hopeful that is the trajectory in which we're moving. That is how we are evolving. But I know I've had conversations with folks leading up to this, next General Assembly, who have said, my fear is we're just going to stand on the floor and debate one another, come up with a bunch of committees and keep going with the status quo.
Yeah,
how do we get to the doing?
That's always the threat of that. Elona and I often laugh about my first plenary that I moderated. We spent 2 hours wordsmithing one paragraph that at the I kid you not, that at the end of the day, we were not going to do anything with. And I think in many cases, we become so regulatory, not to say we don't need rules and regulations, we do.
Right.
As Mom used to tell me, law is for the lawless. But oftentimes it becomes a barrier to the doing. We spend so much time on trying to say the right things that we never get to the doing. Right? So, and that doesn't mean that we don't love God with head and heart. I'm not suggesting that at all. All I'm saying is that there has to be congruence. At some point, the rubber has to meet the road. And we have to call the question when it becomes clear that we are getting the right verbiage in place as an excuse not to do what's right.
Right.
We have to call it what it is. We have to get to the doing. If a house is on fire, we don't spend time arguing about, okay, well, what type of bucket are we going to use, and who's going to be in front of the line, and no. Let's get together and put this fire out. Right. You get what I'm saying? I think that's what we got to get to.
Is it that people don't feel, so that brings a couple of things to mind for me. Is it that people don't feel that they have skin in the game, so to speak? Or is it that they're just complacent? Like, I don't want to get out of my comfort zone. That's going to be uncomfortable.
I think I agree. It's all of the above. And I think, again, that people have really put the church in a position that it was not meant to be. That, our expectation of General Assembly itself, if we are able to say this is the opportunity where we actually are assembled as a body to make decisions for all of us, we kind of reduce that, though, into these perfunctory relationships around procedures or again, the practices that we have, and don't see that we're working in the middle of this huge gift that we have been given. And I think, but we do need to recognize it's all of the above. So there isn't going to just be one thing to do other than really to say we belong to the church that's been given to us. How do we prepare ourselves in the midst of this gift to use it to its best uses? And there needs to be a time where, when we say arguing about terminology can be set aside as a discussion. It should not be, make the main thing, which is how is the church going to be the hands and feet of Christ in the world? I think it's important as Presbyterians that we do understand that we can own the responsibilities that we have and we can be accountable for them. Maybe that's the better way to say it. But we need to show the world that in our orderliness, the reason for that is so that we are prepared and equipped to respond to a variety of situations when they occur. That's the reality of that. And
Say that again. Say that again. That's the first time I've heard that. Say that again. That's I think that's really important. The reason,
we've been given our orderliness is so that we're prepared and equipped to respond to anything that arises. The preparation that we have in terms of our polity, our reports and our referrals are there to help us to understand that whatever might come tomorrow that we don't know, we can't even anticipate, we'll be equipped to respond. We won't be faltering about, so what should the church do in this situation? We can again turn back like the Sankofa bird and say, this is what we've learned in the past about how to respond to this situation. That's what we're going to carry forward. I really see that, part of my appreciation as a Presbyterian for our church is that in all other places of my life, my civil engagement, my community engagement, and in my family, I've been able to kind of sort through the things that are important and to say, how can I be careful about, how I talk with you? How can I make sure my eyes are really seeing all that I need to see? Because I've come from a church that has said that's important. So anyway, yeah.
Yeah, I think you make a great point, Elona. I love as Presbyterians that we lift up doing things decently and in order. I love the fact that we shun chaos and confusion. I love the fact that we think the faith. However, orderliness doesn't mean dead and without spirit.
Or that it's not a little messy sometimes.
That's right. It does get messy sometimes. I think we need to put some order back into our order. ARDOR. You can have both. It's not a dichotomy. It's not a binary where we choose one or the other. We can have orderliness. We can have order, and we can have order. We can have spirit. We can have feeling. I'm not just a brain walking around or just feelings walking around. I'm both. I'm all of that together. And we need to address human beings as such. That is the intellectual and the emotional and it's all of that. We're all of that. And I think we need to lift that up as well. And I'm just going to talk about the elephant in the room. We have to address our own classism and elitism.
Right.
We have a reputation for being a highly educated group of people, and we are. But that has many times, bled over into classism and elitism. I know very godly people. Yeah. I mean, people who know the Lord, who love the Lord, who serve the Lord, who have been barred from leadership in many of our churches because they didn't have degrees. That's ungodly. That's ungodly, and the church is poorer for it.
Right.
When we deny people leadership just because they may not be the most articulate people, or they may not have degrees or whatever. What does that have to do with spiritual leadership? Right. You could be a degreed devil. You understand what I'm saying? And I'm not speaking against education. I'm pro-education. I have 3 degrees myself, so that's not what I'm saying. Don't get it twisted. But education doesn't get rid of sin. That's a spiritual matter. That's a matter of the heart. So I think we have to address that head on. Our own elitism and our classism, and because I think that's a huge barrier to many to growth in many of our congregations.
As you all, I know that you will be passing the mantle at this upcoming assembly, and what are as we gather together for this in June. What are your particular, do you have any concerns or whatever for commissioners, or any items that you see as that we need to be especially prayerful about, or just kind of what are you hoping for commissioners in the body as we gather?
Well, for me, as usual, and this is my hope, the last one, and it'll be this time as well, is that they see this as a time primarily of discernment and not just winning. that to discern what God is doing, that first and foremost, that's why we don't have delegates. That's why we don't have
A convention. Yeah.
a convention.
Right.
That each and every person has to come with the sole purpose of discerning the will of God. What is God? How is the Spirit moving? How do we collectively discern what? And the decision making should flow out of that discernment, not out of some desire to wield power or to win. That's not what we're doing. You know, the first and foremost General Assembly should be a time of discernment. That when we get to the decision making, that we have some sense of God is in this, so this is how we're going to move. Yeah. That would be my main desire and prayer for the assembly.
I'm praying that those that are called to serve as commissioners are able to fulfill their responsibilities, and that their preparation and their travel is all safe, and that they arrive well prepared, and are able to do the job. So that's the first thing I'm praying for. And then for all matters that come before us, I always believe that the Spirit presides among us when we come together as the assembly, and that these are not just decisions that are made where we could mark it on the calendar and then move on. This is part of that bigger picture of the church growing and stretching and incorporating so many ideas, and the realities of what we're dealing with now may not even be the reality 24 hours later. So I'm just praying that as a body we are there as the Spirit is among us to hear and respond and to see what God is leading us to do. That's always been for me. I just can't tell you how I really truly believe that that's what's happened and in the past. And as we move forward, each General Assembly again receives what previous General Assemblies and those personalities have brought to it. So that's, even as we evaluate this General Assembly, and a lot of it will be around the technical challenges. I'm praying that all the people that have given thousands of hours to make it happen, that they feel appreciated and valued and respected. But that we know every time if there's a problem, that problem is there so that we learn how to do it better the next time. Right. So let's just keep moving on. But it does mean people need to be prepared and equipped. And so that's what my prayers are now for everybody.
Yes.
Even the families or your workplace where you're saying, I've got to take this time off, so I can work as part of the Presbyterian General Assembly. I'm praying for all those situations.
One more thing I would like to say too, and it's about Matthew 25. Having been involved in the leadership innovation team, or the LIT.
Thank you.
And now the vision implementation process is underway of the VIP. We were convinced 2 years ago that this is the vehicle that God has given us to lead us into the future, and we are more convinced now than ever that is the case. And my prayer is that there will be even greater buy-in, greater support coming out of this assembly for Matthew 25.
Yes.
We feel that strongly about what is happening, and especially the leadership of the director, PMA, our dear sister, Reverend Dr. Diane Moffat. We really feel like this is how the Spirit is leading us. So
yes.
we hope that the commissioners agree with us and become evangelists for getting people on board with that.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Appreciate both of you, all of you.
Yes, thank you.
I am so grateful and thankful for not only this time. This is as a seminary professor used to say, this is a wealth of blessings that I feel like I do not deserve to have this time with you, all of you. Thank you so much for spending time with us. Thank you so much for being our servant leaders these last 2 years.
Absolutely. Amen. Amen. Yeah.
You have have etched your names in the history of this church as such amazing, wise, insightful leaders, servant leaders. And I am very, very hopeful for the continued work that you both, I know, are going to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Diane, any closing
Thank you.
words from you?
No, I want to just add in the chorus to say thank you to Dee for this being Matthew 25, this vision to do this, and to Elder Elona Street-Stewart and Reverend Gregory Bentley. You all, we so highly respect and love you. You are such deep, just deeply loved and gifted, and our church is better because of your ministry. And I believe you were called for such a time as this.
Amen.
Thank you. Thank you.
Amen.
Thank you. Bless you, sister. Thank you.
All right.
Thank both of y'all for having us.
Mm-hmm. Same.
Thank
Same.
you.
Thank you very much.
Such a rich conversation. You know, it's one of the great highlights of my position to sit at the feet of these wise and clearly gifted people and to listen to them teach. There is a knowing, doing gap. We need to close that gap, as Reverend Bentley said, and that has been ringing in my ears for weeks now. I hope you enjoyed this conversation and took away something that you can apply in your own calling, in your own serving context. There were so many nuggets of wisdom from our co-moderators. So thank you again to them for taking time out of their busy schedules to talk with us. And may we all remember to pray for our commissioners as they discern the work of the church over the next 3 weeks. It is an arduous task and a very important role to play in the future of our church. You know, as Elona said, we are part of something bigger than us, a gift from God. And the Matthew 25 vision is our guidepost. Action is our charge. Together, we're evolving to keep our feet to faith and our focus on actively engaging our world. Matthew 25 is helping our church to become known for making disciples who are committed to bearing witness to Christ and making a difference in our world, as Diane likes to say, representing Christ to the world. If you are still discerning the invitation to become a Matthew 25 church, we ask that you just simply visit the website and listen. We'd love to help you through the process. I hope you will all join us on Thursday, July 21st at 1 p.m. Eastern Time for the next episode of Being Matthew 25. We are going to be joined by the pastors from Open Table in Nashville, Tennessee, a 1001 new worshiping community and a Matthew 25 church. And for those of you who were not aware, this is the 10-year anniversary of 1001 new worshiping communities. And we are incredibly excited about some of the great things we're going to have for you and for them to help celebrate 10 years of 1001 being part of Matthew 25. So thank you for responding to the good news of Jesus and being a faithful expression of what it means to be Christ's disciples in this time and place, and for being Matthew 25.